When God created the world, it was with a single objective, that man should achieve perfection, as we discussed. A person's given an assignment. If you're not given the tools or the education, or you don't have the capacity, we're talking about the whole thing is absurd. How do you give a person an assignment if he doesn't have the means to accomplish the assignment? Either he doesn't have the intellectual ability, doesn't have the financial means, he doesn't have the tools to bring it about. How do you expect him to accomplish that? Whatever that objective is. So if God says the value of mankind being endowed with free choice, evidently he's endowed with an ability, with a potential, that if he chooses to do what he's supposed to do, he's able to achieve the end result, which is perfection. Otherwise, you can't expect from a person to achieve something if it's not within his capacity to achieve what he's supposed to achieve. So the Torah begins. Why did God create the world? For the sake of the Torah. And for the sake of the Jewish people, who are the only ones who will have that capacity, that they can utilize the Torah to bring about that perfection within themselves, within the world. Okay? That means everything in existence, experiences, what we see, contributes to the ability to achieve perfection. I'll give you an example. David HaMelech says, King David says, Hashemayim misaprin k'kel. When he looked at the sky, he says, the heavens speak of God's glory. When David looked at the heavens, he says, the heavens speak of God's glory. When we look at a beautiful night, you're on top of a mountain, and you see it. You see God's glory. It's amazing. This outshines the planetarium, the Hayden Planetarium, endless times over. On top of this mountain. Can't compare. Is that the takeaway? It may be true, but that's not the takeaway. David's takeaway was when he looked at the heavens, he says, the heavens speaks God's glory. It's a whole different reality. Meaning you're able to put the heavens in a perspective that you're so amazed that you see the hand of God. And the more you see God in existence, but you don't necessarily have to see him in that context. You can see him like you're sitting in the Hayden Planetarium. Not to be impressed. You may be amazed, but you're not impressed with the godliness of existence. So there's enough obviousness in existence that if you want to see it, you could see it. And on that, you make choices, and those choices will bring to perfection. In Hebrew, the word or the term for fear of God is yiras shamayim, fear of heaven, not fear of God, fear of heaven. Why is the term in Hebrew heaven and not God? Say yiras Hashem, but it's referred to as yiras shamayim, fear of heaven. Okay, so Rav Chaim Volozhiner explains in his work Nefesh HaChaim that why does the world function in the context that it does? Whether there's regression, advancement, whatever happens, it's all based on man's behavior. If man behaves as he should behave, then God provides blessing, bounty to make life less complicated. If a person, the Jewish people misbehave, God withdraws. When he withdraws, there are problems. There's lack, there's pain, there's discrimination. There's a lack of clarity. That's what happens. So if you read the script right, as we just read in Rabbeinu Yonah, what is the value of pain? It can be either a wake-up call, it's an alert, or it's atonement. King Solomon says at the end of Koheles, Sov Dover Hakol Nishma. What does that mean? At the end of time, everything will be clarified. You know what that means? When Mashiach will come, in retrospect, we'll understand everything, why things had to happen in the past as they did happen. Right now, we say, why? Doesn't make sense. Why was there a Holocaust? Why was there a pogrom? Why was it this? Why was this tragedy? We don't know. We don't understand why it had to be that way. Why couldn't God work it out differently? We don't know. That's the answer. Sov Dover, but at the end of time, where all evil will be purged from existence, will you have that clarity of soul and mind? You'll be able to look at the past and say, now I understand everything. Everything falls into place. It couldn't have been any other way other than that. Just to give you a semblance of an inkling of what we're talking about. You know, a person goes and he's a patriot. And he joins the armed forces to defend his country, because if he doesn't defend them, they'll be overtaken by the enemy. And to be overtaken by the enemy, they'll be deprived of freedom. And not only freedom, they will actually live lives which are not tolerable. That's how the enemy will actually deprive them. And you go to war, and you have a standing army, and they fight for their freedoms, for their values, and they win the war. But in every war, there's casualties. It's as much as it's painful that people lose loved ones, but they understand the value that you can't have freedom unless you destroy the enemy. And destroying the enemy is synonymous. There has to be casualties. Because it's an impossibility that there should not be casualties. Does the person feel, and he believes in God, but why did God take him? The answer is because war means death. War means, but look at the end result. We have freedom. We have our values. The enemy can't rear its head any longer. You appreciate that state, and you appreciate, understand the cost factor to achieve that. That's in real time. At the end of time, there are many things we don't understand. It's only we'll understand it once we have all the blindfolders taken off of us. Evil doesn't allow us to see things correctly because we're all conflicted. At best, we accept it, but to fully internalize it, to understand why every detail had to be the way it was, we don't understand it. At the end of time, in retrospect, as we say, hindsight is 20/20. We'll understand every aspect, every nuance, why certain things had to happen at certain junctures in history, and if it wouldn't have happened, the end result wouldn't have been the same. And now we're able to appreciate it. And why this person, not that person. Why this person returned from the battle and the other person didn't return from the battle. We don't understand. We don't have a complaint. Why did his son return and somebody else's son did not return? But still, evidently, if one person returned, the other didn't, it was meant to be that way. But why? Do we have an answer? We have no answer. At the end of time, in retrospect, you'll have the answer because everything will be clarified. Everything will fall into place. But right now, life, whatever tools we need to achieve that perfection, they exist. We just have to take advantage. What do you do with it? Weaponry. Do you take it to fight the enemy, or do you take it to commit a crime? You can take that same gun and use it for evil, or could use that gun when you have to and use it for something very positive, which is to defend your country, or to be a security person to protect society, that they should not be victimized by criminals. That's what it is. But that's choice. And identically, everything in existence, do you see the sky? Do you see God's hand as David saw it? The heavens speak God's praise, or you just see it as something very impressive? It's amazing what's out there. It begins with amazing and ends with amazing. That's about it. But in terms, does it give you any grasp or clarity of who God is? The answer is no. Of course, God created this world. It's amazing. But what's the therefore as a result of that? Shmuel, we mentioned it before in the story, was a doctor, but he was also an expert astrologer. And he said, as he's fully proficient in all the alleyways of Pumbedisa, which was a region in Babylon, that's the way he understands all the avenues of heaven. All the gateways of heaven, he's as adept. As he is adept in his own region, all the travel avenues and roads, that's how he understands the pathways of heaven, meaning you're able to read the future. And he says a person who has the ability to read the stars and see it does not, he's denying God's existence in his life. Why? Because if you could read it accurately, there's no other way to understand it, but you see God's hand. As they said, the handwriting is on the wall. And it's beyond that. But if you could and you choose not to, it's like you're turning your back on God. I prefer not to know. I prefer not to see. You know, the king knocks on the door. You could open the door and see who the king is. I choose not to. I keep the door locked, keep him out. You lock him out. You understand? There's a claim. If the king is knocking and you have the ability to let him in, admit him, and be exposed to his presence, how do you lock him out? If you have the ability to read the zodiac and the stars, and when you read it, you're in a state of, you cannot deny God's hand in creation. How do you turn your back on? How do you put your head in the sand? Therefore, there's a claim against the person. That's Shmuel's comment. So Ramchal says, although initially when we come into this world, we don't see God, but the objective of growth is, as we have experienced this life, there are enough indicators that as you continue, you see more and more, because it's all out there. You know, it's interesting. When we were kids, we went to camp. There was a night activity. It was called treasure hunt. What was a treasure hunt? They would hide certain things out in the field. And if you would win, if you would find whatever you're supposed to find, you won the treasure hunt. But how do you find it? When they planted the various things in the field, there were certain indicators. If you notice them, you know exactly where to go and where to look. But if you glossed over him, you would never find the treasure. So you have to notice all the different nuances, things which are a little different, and when you pick up on it, you're able to continue, and ultimately you're going to come to the location where the treasure is buried. It's exactly what life's all about. There are enough indicators in this life that if you read the script right and you're sensitive to the nuances, it will lead you to the truth. But you have to choose to be focused and pay attention and to retain it and to understand that 2 follows 1 and 3 follows 2, and you follow the progression and you can arrive where you're supposed to arrive. That's what life's all about. You know, I was traveling right before Rosh Hashanah. I returned after Rosh Hashanah to the United States. So I met a cousin on the plane returning from Israel. And she's a few years older than I am. I hadn't seen her in many years. And she lives most of the year in Israel. In the winter, she's in Florida. And she sees me. She's all excited. And she says to me, I hear you accomplished so much. You know, we grew up together, even though she's about 3 years older than I am. This and that. And her husband does this in Israel and does that. In the United States, he was a top computer person, this and that. So I said to her, I said, you know something? Everybody has a purpose. And the purpose is to make a difference. If you could make a difference, you should make a difference. That's the value of life. I felt I can make a difference. So I took the initiative to make the difference. Every person at some level can make a difference. That's exactly what life's all about. Make the difference. That's what I said to her. She was like taken aback. It was so profound to her. It's unbelievable. If you can make a difference, you're supposed to make a difference. That's how she responded. And I shared it with other people. Somebody who lives in Englewood, I said to her, and this person is a graduate of Wharton, MBA, this and that. And she's a Baal Teshuva many years ago. She's been Baal Teshuva through Yad Avram, whatever it is. She goes with a hair covered, fully observant woman. And whatever children are observant. And I said to her, you can make a difference. You should make a difference. She says, it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable message. Everybody at some level can make a difference, whether you're a volunteer in the hospital, whether you're able to help a person across the street. If you can make a difference, you have to make a difference. You can't live in your own cocoon and say, all life is only me and nobody else exists outside myself. And if you stop making a difference, you'll understand to what degree you can make so much more difference. And all of a sudden, the panorama of your ability, it gets wider and broader. And that's what life's all about. But if you're, as they say in the old vernacular, if you're a stick in the mud, that's all you remain. You're a stick in the mud. You don't get out of there. You're stuck in your place. You understand? There has to be some degree of movement. And life is not you. Life is to make a difference. That's the point. And there's enough in creation existence that God provides for us that we can make a difference in our own lives and we can make differences in other people's lives. But what do you need? You have to keep your eyes open. You have to have an interest. But if you have that interest and you have that will to take initiative, God will provide you with that level of clarity to be able to take advantage of what the opportunity may be.